do you have thoughts about how there's like many different types of avoidances and they're kind of sneaky and subtle?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of an example. Well, I don't know if this is the answer to your question, but I'm trying to look more at, like when I do get anxious and I want to like avoid a conversation about, with my husband or with a family member. I'm starting to, something you said just recently, that I'm trying to look at what other feelings might be going on inside also. Am I feeling frustrated, angry, maybe kind of scared and alone, or sad? And I think especially sadness and stuff like that have been hard for me to recognize when they're there. You know, the anxiety is always the prevalent part. And so you've talked a lot also about looking at our core beliefs. And so I'm trying to look at that too, without like, going too deep and trying to analyze and figure out, because I know that that's part of my OCD too. I think I try so hard to figure out in the past, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Or that I would, it would replay in my mind. So I'm not trying to do that, but more trying to just look at what would cause me to feel this way, and not feel comfortable with who I am, just as I am, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a great example of when you start to self-observe and self-monitor, and you're looking for triggers. You at first maybe you just start to look at anxiety. So you look at like, what was the trigger? What was my anxious thought? What was my anxious sensation? Or what sensations did I have? What feelings did I have? What did I do in response? But once you start kind of getting in the habit of doing that, then you can look at what all kinds of different feelings you might be having, and just like you're saying, kind of have the habit of self-awareness, so that when you do notice yourself doing something that's not consistent with values, or you're thinking that you might do something that's not consistent with your values, you can stop and reflect on it. Is that what you mean?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And that I think is happening a lot more, that I'm just recognizing, okay, oops, here we go again, and just kind of taking a deep breath, and it doesn't, I mean, depending on the severity and depending on the situation, it doesn't overwhelm me like it used to. That I guess I'm getting more comfortable maybe with living up with uncertainty, that I can't have all the answers. I don't need to have all the answers. And that possibly when I'm doing that, I'm not being in the moment. So I really, I try to do things that, especially since COVID, I've really tried to, but prior to that, do things that will help me to stay in the moment, like meditate, especially too when my anxiety is really high. Then sometimes I'm learning to kind of know the difference of when do I just have to be still and let this pass, and even just sit and meditate, as hard as it would be, or just be mindful. Or maybe when is it good to do a different thing, and so it'll take my mind off of it. Not so much to avoid it, but not let the anxiety consume me so that I almost feel paralyzed. So.
Yeah. How do you make that? That's a great differential. How do you think through whether to stay with an anxious experience, or to redirect your attention away from it?
Well, if I have that feeling that I want to jog in the house, I know I better just stay with what I'm doing, but then sometimes I will, I'm trying to think. Sometimes I'll feel uneasy, and so I'm doing all these things around the house to kind of distract my attention, but the intrusive thoughts keeps coming back. And that's maybe a time when I say, you know what? Rather than trying to keep cleaning or make the kitchen perfect, maybe I need to just go outside and work in the garden, because that's something that it just puts me back in the moment. And I initially, when at the very beginning of the pandemic, when it was, there was just so much uncertainty. There was so many, well, still a lot of information, and you don't know what's true, what's not true. Being in the garden, working in the garden, getting my hands dirty, it just put me in the moment, and it took away that urgency, like I should be out, I got to go run, or I've got to. It was kind of a peaceful way of being active.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And just to frame that up for other people too, which is exactly what you're describing, the differential is kind of what's harder, but not to be mean to yourself about what's harder. So what you're saying is like when I have the urge to run in the house, that's when I stay still. You're doing
Mm-hmm.
the opposite. So you're doing the harder thing. When I have the urge to clean the kitchen, I step away from the kitchen. That's also doing the harder thing. Either jogging in the house or continuing to clean would both be the compulsive behaviors that are like kind of going with the anxiety. And you want to notice the anxiety, allow it to be there, but do the opposite of what would keep it going. So that differential is really great. Sometimes that means, don't just sit there, don't just do something, sit there. But
Yeah.
other times that means, get up and go for a walk or go in the garden or something like that. Because if you just stay in it, you're likely to start to dwell in a way that's not helpful.
Right. I'm laughing a little bit to myself because even today, it's like 4 o'clock couldn't get here soon enough. It was like, and so I prepared, and I found like I was getting nervous this morning because this morning we were, getting Christmas gifts online for our grandkids and our nieces and nephews, and I kept thinking, oh, I should be preparing for the talk. I should be preparing for the talk. This was like 9:30 this morning, and I mean, I had already I'd gone over a lot, with what you had said to the things that helped me to relate effectively, anxious moments, times when I was anxious effectively, and sometimes that I wasn't. But my mind kept going to the future, and then like my husband played golf, and I thought, oh gosh, he's going to be gone, and I've got to do this podcast all by myself. And I mean, it was silly because he wouldn't be in here anyways. But so I know that sounds crazy, but
No, why'd you
what I
learn?
did,
Yeah.
so I could laugh at it, and then I at one point I just purposely went on a bike ride because I thought, and I went on the bike ride like right at around 2:45, not a long bike ride because I thought I can't go on a bike ride. What if something happens to me? And I did get in a bad bike fall earlier this week, swerving to get out of the way from another cyclist. And I found myself feeling like afraid to get back on my bike. And I thought, no, I'm going to do it. And I'll, I had a thought, well, what if I got in an accident and then I'd be late for huddle. So I made myself take a bike ride in the neighborhood. And so that I felt like was a good example, was a time when I wasn't riding my bike because I was anxious. It was more that I needed to trust the fact that I'm prepared enough. I could go take a bike ride and enjoy it. And it doesn't have to be a long bike ride, but just to do something different.
Yeah, well, and my reaction is that I really appreciate your attitude in that your anxiety really jumps around. Like it
Yeah.
can really give you a lot of different what ifs about a variety of different things throughout any given day. So it seems like you maintain a really good attitude where you think like, oh, I'm doing a what if again. Here's my chance. Now let me go do something that would challenge my anxiety. Is that attitude easy for you to maintain? Or like, can you speak to that as we finish up the session here?
You know what? I think it's getting easier and easier all the time. It really is. And I think sometimes I'm also learning that just some things are out of my control. Some things are going to play themselves out in time. And one thing, I was listening to your podcast, your most recent podcast, and I think it was with Danielle. Anyways, she mentioned about traveling, and that's something I've wanted to do. Anyways, she talked about, but I have fears around it, and but she talked about that one. Don't overestimate your risks, and don't underestimate your ability. And I remember when I had heard the first podcast that I think it might have been Reed Wilson, I'm not sure who it was that said that. It really hit me because I think that that's easy for me to do. I build it up. I catastrophize what the risks are. And I think that's why in the past I avoided a lot more. But I'm learning to not overestimate it, and not and to recognize my ability to handle a situation. And that really helped me so much when I first heard it. So when I heard it yesterday on the when she was talking about traveling and everything, it kind of refreshed it in my mind. And I do think that that's happening. It's kind of up and down, but I think it's a continual movement upward, forward in a positive way.
Yes, I'm really happy to hear that. And I think in summary, I just want to reinforce all the skills that you described in terms of preparing, what you do to prepare for the anxious moment, that you know what you're willing to self-observe. So you're willing to find what your triggers are. You're looking for your avoidances. When it's happening, you're getting distance from the anxious thoughts and surrendering in the present moment to the anxious sensations. And then this belief that you're developing that regardless of what I'm feeling, I can handle it. And I'm not going to overestimate risk and underestimate myself. Rather, I'm going to underestimate the risk, or try to see the risk for what it is, try to see the anxious thoughts for what they are, and believe that I can handle it. And I think you're on your way to overcoming anxiety. So I'm looking forward to talking more. Thanks for your time.
Okay, Maggie. All right. Thank you.